I'm placing my bets that now you're hooked on vintage just like we are. So AJ and I thought it would be helpful to give you an idea of what you should look for and look out for before you drop your change on a new ride.
So we thought we'd show you some of our own vintage iron, share with you how we acquired it, how much we paid for it, and all of the things we experienced along the way, both good and bad. My 1976 Ski-Doo TNT 340 is an example of the very best that you can get in vintage sleds, both in condition and price. This sled is in nearly brand new showroom condition and cost me only 600 bucks. So when I'm looking for a vintage sled, I typically try to look for something that's a little unique. Is this unique? Absolutely not.
No.
And for the most part, you are not going to find a unique Ski-Doo because there is so many of them out there. At the same time, you're going to be able to have a much broader selection if you want a cleaner, nicer looking sled that parts are available for.
If you don't want a sled that you're going to have to hunt for parts, a Ski-Doo's your best choice.
It didn't run when I bought it, but it didn't take much. I went to town, bought a new set of plugs, and it fired up. So that's literally all this sled needed. That's my Ski-Doo TNT 340. It's not very unique, but it does run great. I think it's a keeper. This is a keeper.
Some of you may recognize my whip from an episode of Snow Tracks a few years ago. I bought it at Heydays in Minnesota for 600 bucks. It started on the first pull when I bought it, and it started first pull every time since. Another example of an outstanding vintage find. This whip was the first vintage sled that had ever been brought around the Snow Tracks World headquarters, and so far it's been the most reliable. It does have one unique feature that's interesting though. This sled has what's called a para-rail suspension, which is kind of a cross between bogies and slide rails. It's like slide rails with bogie wheels all the way along them, and it was before anybody had thought of slide rails, that was the first idea. In terms of vintage sleds, this is a great example of a survivor sled that's unrestored and runs just like the day it was built, maybe even better. And if you can find one like this, buy it.
My 74 Arctic Cat Lynx 2 is a prime example of what a crazy deal looks like. I only had to cough up 200 bucks and an old used Camoplast track that was lying around for it. It isn't perfect, it's taken some work, and it still doesn't run quite right, but you know what? For the money and the trade, it's a pretty good deal. This sled was a little bit of a splurge. I was sitting in the office one day, I was on the internet, and I found it within 30 minutes of the office. It was too good of a deal, I had to go get it. And I think part of us here at Snow Tracks really wanted to have an Arctic Cat. A guy like Roger Skyme, who actually had his hands on the production and design of this snowmobile, that means something to us. At the end of the day though, there's some problems with this sled and problems that you should look out for. Number one, steel gas tanks. Be very cautious of steel gas tanks because they are all rusted inside. Besides that, you know what? It's in good shape. Always look for the track and the condition of that track because they're hard to get, they're a pain in the butt to change, and they're expensive.
The moment I laid eyes on a Snowjet SST, I knew I had to have one. They're very hard to find in our area, at least to find in good shape. This one had been sitting in a shed for about 20 years and, aside from some tarnished chrome and gunk buildup under the hood, it was in excellent shape. I paid 550 bucks for it, which was probably a little high, but it's definitely one of the more unique sleds we have in our fleet. I have a thing for this Snowjet. I don't really know why, I just love it. It doesn't really run that good. It'll go wide open, but it won't idle. It needed a lot of work when I got it. It's a great example of a sled that looked better than it really was inside. Like really it did. But at the end of the day, I wanted this sled, so there's a lesson to be learned here. If you have to have a specific sled, that's fine. But you better be prepared to either pay more than you should for it because it's emotionally attached, or do more work to the ones you can find.
When it all boils down, at the end of all of this, we're not vintage collectors. We like to ride the stuff that we buy. We like to go out and beat on it. We like to bang the sleds. That's why we're the Leaf Spring Bangers. And you need to check us out online, join our Facebook page, and come see what we do with this stuff. And hopefully it gets you as amped up as we are on vintage because we just have a flippin' blast doing this stuff. It's so much fun. Come on and join us.
If you like this video, post a comment and tell us what you think. Then click on this link to subscribe to Snow Tracks TV here on the YouTube channel.